What's going on, Roto Grinders? Welcome to another edition of College Basketball After Dark. Hopefully this works through Google Hangouts. First time we've used it in a while. I've actually got a streaming video in the background to make sure it starts playing here, but it comes through at about a 45-second delay on the Hangouts. So hopefully this starts okay, but assuming we're live on the air right now, we'll say hello to Varncass. Jonathan, what's going on this week?
Hey, how's it going? Nothing much, just chilling here, waiting for tomorrow.
A pretty good week this week with the college hoops. I had some success this week, not as much as I would have liked in the big tournament on, was it Wednesday night, but it was all right.
Yeah, I managed to put either Wayne Blackshear or Tony Parker on basically every single roster, so kind of ruined my Wednesday.
Your love for Wayne Blackshear didn't grow any stronger after Wednesday, I take it.
No, I will not be using him ever again. Actually, I did not like him to begin with. I just thought he was going to have so much usage that it wasn't going to matter.
I believe he got in foul trouble, didn't he?
Yeah, he had 2 turnovers, 5 fouls. I think he was like 0 for 2 from the field, and he didn't play very many minutes. It just was a bad game all around.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird night. A lot of the popular plays didn't do much. Have you heard anything on a status for Okafor for tomorrow?
He's questionable. I think he's going to end up playing. I would imagine he would end up. I mean, he finished the game, so the ankle is tightens up after a while. He's in a boot, I guess. After he gets out there, warms it up a little bit, I think he'll be fine.
And in that same game, I believe we have another injury concern tomorrow as well with Blossom game for Clemson. Sounds like he's a game time decision as well. What else did I come across with for injuries on this slate? Might as well just go through most of them now. Finney Smith should probably still be out for Florida. Michael Frazier obviously out as well, so Florida remains really thin. We'll get to that game in a little bit. Matt Carlino still doubtful with that concussion. What's happened to him? I mean, he was expected to play one game, and now all of a sudden he's just still out.
Yeah, I'm not sure. They're really taking it. Cautious with him. It's kind of a guessing game with concussions. So until you get that all clear from the trainers and from the athletic department, you're sitting. So they're not in a very good spot today. I don't think that Jawan Johnson or Carlino makes too good of a play either way. So I don't think we're going to be sitting waiting for his status like I was last Saturday.
All right, let's move on to the games for this Saturday afternoon. The first game, Georgia Tech at North Carolina. North Carolina coming off that tough game against Duke, favored by 13. This is a pace-up game for Georgia Tech, though they're not a team that we often target. But anybody worth a look in this game?
FanDuel, there's always the Charles Mitchell factor here. He's always got that potential to go for 30 points, and then he's always got that potential to get you a single-digit point total. It's hard. I really think that Georgia Tech is in a decent spot to do pretty well here. We saw Pittsburgh, almost put up 90 on North Carolina. Duke is obviously a great offensive team. They put up a whole ton of points on North Carolina. The defense just isn't there for the Tar Heels right now. So I could see some people doing pretty well on Georgia Tech. I'm just having a hard time pinning which one it is. And Chris Bolden is out again for this, I believe. Didn't really affect much at all. Their guards can't shoot. Bolden's the only one who really can. There's a couple extra minutes to go around, but nobody really that makes any difference. I mean, Tadrick Jackson played a little bit more, and he went for 17 fantasy points, but Georgia Tech's guards are just so bad that I really cringe at the thought of using them, even in a pace-up game like this.
Yeah, it's just hard to find anybody you really like, despite a fairly decent situation there. But, I'm avoiding it. I mean, they're 13-point dogs. I know it's a pace-up game, but just not a lot to like for me. As far as the UNC side goes, we've kind of seen finally a hierarchy kind of emerge with North Carolina. Bryce Johnson and Marcus Page have kind of emerged as the best fantasy options for the team lately, though Page did struggle against Duke the other night. But nobody really comes cheap anymore. I mean, even Meeks, despite his ups and downs, is still 7,300, and it's kind of hard for me to find anyone I like on North Carolina here too.
Yeah, it's interesting because I have a feeling a lot of this game is going to be played in the paint area. Georgia Tech, because their guards are so bad, they do all their work in the paint, and they are one of the best rebounding teams in the country, which either takes away some of North Carolina's strength with the offensive rebounding, or it might help them because the ball is going to be just bouncing around that hoop and not having long rebounds like you get with long three-point shots. I mean, I think Bryce Johnson is pretty much a lock for 30 fantasy points. I don't mind his price. He's basically going to go for 17 and 10 every single game. Yeah, Meeks and Hicks have been kind of splitting time, although I think Meeks is basically taken the starting job back over. It was a couple games that Roy benched him. I don't like Meeks at 7,300, even though he crushed Duke. I would go Bryce Johnson if you had to. North Carolina's going to score a lot of points in this game, and someone's going to have a pretty big game. I can't really trust Page. It's hard to trust him after what he did. So I think if I'm going to use anybody, it's going to be Johnson.
Yeah, he's definitely the safe bet. I agree with you. I can't take Meeks at that price. Just you never know with his minutes. Certainly a guy that's got a lot of upside, but not a lot doing in this game for me either. So move on to the next game on the slate, Pittsburgh and Syracuse. Pitt in a very similar situation where all of their high usage guys have kind of come up in price. Artis, Michael Young, even James Robinson is up to 6,900. And against that Syracuse zone, Syracuse team that's playing a little bit better now. I mean, they beat Louisville the other night. Is this another situation where we can avoid Pitt?
I wrote up Cameron Wright, I think, in the game before against Syracuse because he takes a lot of jump shots, and I thought he was going to be an integral part to bust the Syracuse zone. He ended up getting injured 4 minutes in and didn't do anything in that game. So we really didn't get to see what he was going to do. I still like him here at 5,800. I think he's probably the best play on Pitt. I mean, of course, other than Artis. Artis is going to shoot from long distance. He's going to do his damage inside. 8,000 is a pretty fair price for him. I don't mind sticking him in there if you have enough room. But I think Wright is the interesting play. He has the potential to go for like 25 if he's making his shots. I like him over Jeter at 5,300, even though Jeter's been getting some time on the court lately. It's kind of just hard to gauge Syracuse right now, motivation-wise, and they did beat Louisville, but it's just hard. It's just hard for me to trust them how they're going to come out and play.
Yeah, they've been so up and down all year, and it's not like you're getting a discount really with anyone anymore. All they're just like Pitt. I mean, they're high usage guys. You look, Christmas is 9,900, which is as high as anybody will go. Gabinage is 9,800 now, so I mean he's almost priced out. Cooney at 7,100. He's maybe the most reasonable of the three, but also he's very scoring dependent. So I'm not really on much of anyone in this game. I do see the rationale behind Cameron Wright if you want to use him, or Artis, despite the price tag. But surely there's a lot of different ways you can go. I mean, there's a 15-game slate here. I wouldn't go nuts on this game, which should be relatively low scoring. Syracuse is favored by 4 on the early lines. I don't have a total yet, but the good games are coming. They're just not here yet. We've got a few more kind of duds, but the next one is Oklahoma and Texas Tech. Oklahoma, an 11-point road favorite in this game. as Texas Tech, following their big upset win over Iowa State a couple weeks ago, has kind of gone back to their bottom of the Big 12 kind of ways. So anybody on Oklahoma State or Oklahoma's side that we like here, they're not overly expensive. You look at Heald, Spangler, and Thomas, all 8K or less. So if you had to pick maybe one of the Oklahoma studs, who do you like in this game?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I think Texas Tech to me is the black hole of daily fantasy basketball. They just make everything just so bad all around. They're just slow, and if I had to pick one, I don't think there's anybody on Texas Tech who can match up with Tayshaun Thomas. But the problem is he's just so overpriced on FanDuel that at his 7,400 price point, he hasn't made value like a single time except for that 50 fantasy point game against Iowa State, which was a much better matchup than this one is. It's a much higher paced game. It's hard for me to recommend Oklahoma on the road here. They're used to playing up tempo. I think this is going to be a pretty low scoring game. I mean, Texas Tech's probably not going to break 50. Oklahoma's going to have a struggle getting over 65, and they spread the ball around pretty well. Woodard is he's not to be trusted on the offensive end. He's not a very good offensive player. He relies a lot on assists and steals to do most of his damage, and then he turns it over a bit too. Cousins is up and down. It's hard for me to like anyone on Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, you basically went through the starting five there, and Woodard and Cousins would be the more value-priced options. I get the feeling that maybe one of those two guys will have a nice game for their 6,100 price point. They're both at 6,100, but like you said, kind of hard to trust maybe which one it's going to be or who's going to do most of that producing for Oklahoma in a game that should be relatively low scoring. Is Texas Tech still then a team to avoid, I'm guessing, based on your commentary about them being a black hole? They do get a bit of a pace bump here.
Yeah, I would just avoid them. I mean, let's see. Who was it? It was Todrick Gocher, who's been getting a lot of minutes lately, and I saw he was a popular play for min salary over on DraftKings a couple nights ago. I mean, he doesn't really bring any upside, even though he's been playing good minutes lately. Odiasi has been playing minutes lately, but he's not very good either. I mean, 5,300, he's been getting 20 fantasy points every time, but there's no guarantee he's going to be out there the whole time. The Robert Turner, the guy that we like to talk about, he's actually min salary here for 4,500, but he's lost time to Gocher and Devontae Williams, I think, and maybe a little bit of Keenan Evans as well. I don't know. Tubby Smith is just apparently not a very good coach. I don't even know what he's doing over there at Texas Tech. It doesn't appear that he has any plan whatsoever on how to bring that team out of the gutter. I think they're going to be a Big 12 bottom feeder for a while.
People are probably wondering when we're actually going to get to some picks. I promise we'll get there. Just not with these first 5 games or so. Next one isn't that glorious either, with Minnesota traveling to the Kohl Center to take on Wisconsin, favored by 14 in this game. Wisconsin just keeps on humming along. They do get a pace bump here against Minnesota, who likes to play pretty fast, but you get the feeling that this game will probably be brought down to Wisconsin's tempo more so than played up at Minnesota's tempo, especially with Wisconsin being at home where they play very well. So with that in mind, I mean, I think Minnesota is totally off the table here. I don't play a lot of guys against Wisconsin, let alone on the road from a team that plays fast. So I'm not on in Minnesota at all. Obviously, with Wisconsin, you've got the front court trio of Kaminsky, Decker, and Hayes. Nigel Hayes has been playing very well of late. You look at his consistency. Which is kind of what you're paying for when you get him. I've seen you write that up a few times. You're paying for his basically 20-point floor most nights, and he's going to get you between 20 to 30, but probably not more than that. So Is Hayes a guy you like in this matchup at 6,900? He's kind of the guy I tend to gravitate to.
And you're still going to need 28 points out of him to make value, but I mean, like we've been seeing, there really isn't a whole lot of great like slam dunk plays on this slate. I went through this and it was just kind of everything was just ugh. I mean, there's a few good ones later on, but I mean, it might be the avoid the landmine, put up your 200 score on FanDuel today and take the money. I mean, we're looking at a slate that just doesn't have any overwhelming
Yeah,
overwhelming.
I don't think you're getting 240 today. Obviously, if you put together a GPP winning team, you could get there. But I don't think the average score is going to be as high as we've seen with some of the recent Saturday slates.
Yeah, I mean Hayes is definitely great for a cash game play. I mean, you could probably take most of these Wisconsin guys and feel pretty good about it in the cash game. They spread the ball around really well. They're very efficient offensively. They do a lot of great things with on the offensive end. It's just they all get their points. All the starters, Koenig, Hayes, Decker, Kaminsky all get their points, and Gosser's kind of over there playing defense, hitting the occasional three. He's not really an option, but those four guys, they're all pretty good there. I can't. I mean, if you wanted to take them, I can't really blame you. One thing I will note is that on the GPP side and on the Minnesota side of the ball, if you wanted to take Andre Hollins in the GPP, I think that's a really good play. Um, Wisconsin's defense, it doesn't. They don't foul. They sag a little bit. They let you take long twos. They let you take some threes. And Hollins he's a chucker. So when he gets the ball, he's looking to shoot, 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 which is kind of what you need to defeat Wisconsin. If he gets 20 shots, he makes 13 of them. We could be looking at a really productive fantasy day for Hollins, and I don't think a lot of people are going to be on him. He's good every game. If you look at his game logs, ever since he got over that foot injury, he scores points every game, and it doesn't really matter who he's against. So if you wanted a GPP flyer on him, I couldn't blame you. I think he's a great pick in tournaments.
Yeah, that really is an interesting point because, like I said, I just kind of brought up that I usually avoid teams playing against Wisconsin, and I think a lot of people kind of go by that theory, and Hollins has been solid. You look at his game logs, 25, 30, 35 points a lot of games, and you get the feeling that if Minnesota hangs in this game at all, he's probably going to be a big reason why. So yeah, I can get behind that. That's probably the only play I would like from Minnesota tomorrow as well. Moving on to the next game, Kansas State and Baylor profiles as one of the slowest paced games of the day. But the upshot is, outside of Gathers, there isn't really anybody that's overly expensive here. It's just that it's a tough matchup for everybody involved. So is there anybody that sticks out to you in this game?
I kind of I was looking at this earlier, and I kind of like Gathers for a rebound game here. I know it's a low-paced game, and I know it's probably not going to be very high-scoring. I think Kansas State was just so bad against TCU. I mean, they lost by like 15, and they were horrible rebounding. They looked listless. They looked like they didn't even want to be there. If Baylor wants to just take this game to them, I can see them feeding Gathers in the post, just possession after possession, and Kansas State really doesn't have anybody inside. I mean, they've got Gibson, who's kind of big, but he gets pushed around pretty easily. And Nino Williams isn't that big. Owandu's not that big. Their biggest starter is 6'7", and then they got Stephen Hurt, who isn't very good. I could see Gathers absolutely going ham in this one, and just Baylor feeds him the ball. They just take it to him. He misses. Offensive rebound, misses. Offensive rebound. Just padding his stats up there. Other than that, I really don't like anybody in this game. I think Nino Williams is too expensive, especially against the long athletic defense of Baylor. It's just not a lot to like in this one.
Yeah, there's not. I'm always intrigued by Nino Williams, especially when he's playing well, and he's had some decent games of late. I just don't love the matchup against Baylor. I do like the minutes that have kind of been pretty consistent since he returned from that injury he had a month or so ago, but there's just not a lot of intriguing options here. Would you take a flyer on any of the guards, Cherry or Foster or anybody?
Foster's too risky. I don't know what's going on with him. Kansas State is kind of out of the picture of the tournament now. I can't really see them getting in. Um, I don't know when he's going to be suspended again or benched. He's just too risky for me. Gibson has never really developed into a great player like I thought he was going to be when he was a freshman. Cherry was really good before. Like a couple months ago, he was putting up some pretty good 30-point games, but it looks like he's deferring more to Prince and Gathers lately. It's. If you wanted to go Prince, Prince has been really consistent lately, and Royce O'Neal does a lot of different things, and he's pretty good. I don't think I could tell you you're an idiot for doing that. I definitely don't think that because I think both of those guys have upside. I probably won't be using anybody but Gathers if I have the room.
All right, let's move on to a game that may actually have some good fantasy options. Florida and LSU, and the reason we can talk about this is Finney Smith likely out again for Florida and Michael Frazier out as well. LSU plays very fast, so this is a pace-up game for Florida. So there's probably options here. The problem is that Florida's offense is not exactly good. If you saw any part of that game against Vanderbilt the other night, the game was played basically in the 40s. If there wouldn't have been fouls and stuff towards the end, it would have finished in the 40s. I think Florida might have gotten to 50 at the end. But it was ugly, and Florida's offense without Finney Smith and without Frazier is not exactly a thing of beauty. But the guys that they have remaining, they're cheap. None of their available players are over $5,800, and they're facing a team that likes to play really fast. So there has to be a play or two that we can pluck out of this Florida squad tomorrow. It's just a matter of finding the right one because the other night, really, none of them were that great.
Yeah, I was pretty big on Robinson as soon as that news went out, and Robinson came in. He played terrible in the first couple minutes, got benched for the rest of the first half. Florida went down big, and he got back in and kind of, went for 12 and 6 in the second half and basically brought it back. I would hope that he has solidified his minutes, but you never know with Donovan this year. He's been kind of searching for something that works, and he's been playing a lot of guys, a lot of different minutes. I would hope that Robinson had solidified to 30 minutes per game because if he did, his price is pretty good at 5,300. The only issue is going up against Mickey and Martin inside might be a little bit difficult for him. I could see Chris Walker getting a lot of minutes in this one. I think that a Walker versus Mickey matchup would be interesting. Would be kind of what Florida needs to try to slow Mickey down. He does block a lot of shots for 4,900. If he gets 20, 25 minutes, I can see him hitting 20, 25 fantasy points. So I think he's definitely an interesting option. And I'm kind of intrigued by Casey Hill.
I was intrigued by him on Wednesday, too.
Not because he's a good player, but because I can't see him having a bad game, but I can see him playing terrible. When I think about this in a DFS perspective, I just don't understand how he would have a poor game. I mean, I feel like I could go out there and play for Casey Hill and put up 15 fantasy points, with Eli Carter there and, Chris Walker down low. He's been horrible. He's been absolutely terrible. But 5,300 against LSU. Patterson is not a very good defender. Neither is Josh Gray. I just don't I want to use him so bad.
I'm there with you.
So it's hard. It's hard for me because he's just been horrible all year, and he has turnover problems at times. He is not very good on the offensive end. He does put up a lot of assists, and he will get the minutes. He's the one guy other than Carter I don't think you have to worry about minutes from.
Yeah, I mean, is Carter in play as well? He's not exactly been great either. I don't love the fact that he doesn't really do anything besides score, but he should get some points in this game, I would hope.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't use him on. I probably wouldn't use him on FanDuel. He's points and steals based
Yeah.
basically. He just stands around the 3 point line and basically runs around and waits for himself to get open and shoots a three. And he's been ice cold most of the season. I don't particularly like him on FanDuel. I think with the 3 point bonus and a cheaper price, you could get some value out of him on DraftKings. I used him at 4,900 on Wednesday. That didn't work out so well. I mean, he played big minutes and he didn't do much.
Yeah.
So he's. I mean, he's not going to get you anything massive unless he makes all 7 of his 3 point attempts.
All right, let's talk about the LSU side of the ball, where you were disappointed the other night, most likely, if you took anybody that cost a lot of dollars for LSU, as Martin and Mickey combined got outscored by Tim Quarterman. So you go figure that one out for me.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. I went with Martin most. I didn't want to pay up for Mickey at all.
Yeah, so did I.
I went with Martin. Was still kind of disappointed, but his ownership percentage was pretty good. Texas A&M is a really good team, and I kind of am not surprised that both of those guys struggled in that one against Texas A&M. Neither of those guys had. I mean, Mickey had 7 blocks, but neither of them went nuts with 20 points and 20 rebounds like they were doing. Yeah, Florida has they've got a pretty good defense. They turn you over a lot. They play really slow. It's not the greatest matchup for the Twin Towers for LSU. I still don't know if I want to take Mickey for 10.1. He's going to need 40. He's basically going to need 6 blocks. Pretty good chance of him rebounding and getting at least 30, I would say. It'll depend, though, on, I think, how Chris Walker plays. I'm expecting Chris Walker because you need size to combat their front court. And, I'm thinking that it's going to be Walker on Mickey and Horford on Martin. And I would give the advantage to Martin there, as I think that Walker is a decent defender. He blocks a lot of shots, and this could be a real defensive duel between those guys.
Yeah, I kind of lean the same way, so certainly can't fault you for taking either guy, but it's just hard for me to pay over 10K for Mickey. As for the guards, I mean, Quarterman's price has shot up. He's been playing pretty well lately. To me, I don't like the price tags on any of them. Quarterman and Hornsby are both over 7K. Maybe you can still wrangle some value out of Jalen Patterson, but he's been under 20 the last 3 games, so not a lot to love there for me.
Yeah. I do like. I think that Quarterman has some value even at his price. I mean, we've seen him go for 40. We've seen him go for 30. He only needs about 30 to make value. It's a slate that's I mean, Quarterman's starting now, so you don't have to worry about him only getting 20, 25 minutes when he misses the first 5-6 minutes of the game. It's going to be a low-scoring slate. I think there is definitely merit in using Quarterman today, but it's hard. Someone's got to score for LSU, and these guys all play a lot of minutes. I think I would go with Martin now. I've said it, the last 3 times, and 2 out of 3 hasn't worked. So why don't we make it, 50-50?
That's right. Keep flipping the coin until it comes on the right side. All right, that's enough of that game. Let's move on to Miami and Louisville. got to give Dan Bach some credit. When I was talking to him the other night, he said that Ja'Kiri was a lock for a double-double against Virginia Tech, and he produced quite nicely, 41 fantasy points, 15 points, 15 rebounds in that game. A little bit tougher matchup here against Louisville, and Ja'Kiri's price is up to 8,200, so don't know if he's as much in play here. But kind of the big news in this game, Chris Jones served a suspension in the last game for Louisville. He was reinstated, but it sounds like there's a possibility that he may not start tomorrow. I haven't heard as of yet. So how do we get a handle on this Louisville situation?
Yeah, I think you can ignore Chris Jones. I was actually pretty impressed with how Quentin Snyder played.
I was too. I used him on a few teams. I wish I would have used him a little bit more.
Yeah, me too. Instead of Blackshear. I didn't think that he was going to do anything. He had never done anything the whole year. None of the other guys had really impressed me, and he was light years better than Blackshear out there. I will not touch Blackshear the rest of this year. He's just been so bad certain games, and if Chris Jones comes back, 5,200 is way too much for him. I think basically it comes down to Rozier and Harrell again for Louisville. Rozier had kind of a poor game, but Syracuse, stifled the Louisville attack the whole time, the whole game. It really wasn't a surprise. Louisville struggled to score shooting the ball for the whole season. They're kind of one of the teams that I might look to be upset in the first round. They just have issues scoring the ball when they need to. Close games, they have Harrell down there, but if you can double team him and kick it out, they just don't have anybody who can consistently make that outside shot and really test you. I don't think Harrell's going to be really highly owned here. I think he's a good GPP play again, like he was the other night. His price is a little bit high, but I imagine Chris Jones, if I had to guess, he'll probably get about 25, 26 minutes, somewhere in the mid-20s. Assuming he does play, assuming he did serve his suspension and he's now a Louisville man or whatever Pitino meant by his statement that Shaquan Aaron was not a Louisville man. That's why he didn't play. I think it comes down to Rozier and Harrell. I don't think you can really trust any of the other guys here, especially you can't trust Snyder with his price bump and Jones potentially playing.
Anybody on the Miami side you like? I touched on Ja'Kiri. It's not my favorite matchup, and the prices are kind of high. Rodriguez hasn't been worth much lately. McClellan 7,400, Ja'Kiri's at 8,200. I think they're either priced appropriately or too high for me.
Yeah, I can't. I think we got the chance to use him against Virginia Tech. Ja'Kiri had a great matchup against Virginia Tech, and he really did. He did wonders against them. He's too expensive today. It's pretty much a fade Miami today. Louisville was playing really fast earlier in the season when they had a talent advantage, and they just wanted to run and push the pace on everybody. Now in the ACC, they've been playing really slow, and I have a feeling this is going to be a pretty low scoring game. And I do not like anybody from Miami. I think Louisville's going to come out pretty big in this one. I think Rozier and Harrell do the damage, and they'll coast to a 15-point win.
All right, let's move on to the next game, West Virginia and Oklahoma State. Two teams that, for the most part, tough to get a read on minutes for a lot of guys. A guy that I was really surprised to see the ownership percentage on the other night for some of the big tournaments was Jeff Newberry for Oklahoma State. So let's talk about him for a minute. Kind of has come out of nowhere to put up some pretty good numbers, averaging about 23, 24 fantasy points over their last 4 games. So his price is up to $5,500 now, but what's with this guy? We haven't really talked about him all year.
He's kind of basically came out of the rotation and has solidified himself as the kind of small forward type that basically is just another guard. I mean, that doesn't really make any sense, but they run a three guard, two forward rotation. Newberry's not very flashy. He just does everything pretty well. He's had some good games. He doesn't have a real high usage rate, but he gets it done. Um, you just don't notice him when he's out there, but he scratches and claws his way to a pretty good fantasy game. 5,500 is pretty cheap for him. I think that especially in this matchup against a high-paced West Virginia, he's going to be out there. They're going to need him to handle the ball a little bit against the press. I think he's pretty much good for 2022. I like the price and I like the matchup for him.
And not a ton of, like we said, not a ton of clear-cut value guys on the slate. So definitely one of the safer guys out there. Anybody else in this game? Anybody else from Oklahoma State? Obviously, the Brian Nash is always the high usage guy. With the pace bump against West Virginia, is he in play at 7,800? I mean, he's been decidedly average over the last month or so.
Yeah, he's been really average, but there's something to be said about him taking 32, 35% of the available shots when he's on the floor. He makes a good cash game play, which I never thought I would say about LeBron Nash. He's going to get his 20 points in almost every single game. He's going to get the ball, and he's going to take a lot of shots and do a lot of the rebounding. It's just come down to they run their offense through him, and if you really want to roster somebody and watch them play the whole game and take a lot of shots, I mean, Nash can be your guy. He really never does anything monstrous, but he's not going to tank your lineup.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better about him myself. So those are basically the two guys, Newberry and Nash. I think they're the fantasy options from Oklahoma State here. Every week we say anybody from West Virginia. I don't like State at 8K, and I just can't get behind anybody else on West Virginia, so I have none of them.
I look at Devin Williams at 6,600, and I really want to use him really bad because in my mind, the thought process that goes on is that Huggins is going to play Williams on Michael Cobbins to keep him out of foul trouble and to keep his conditioning down. Williams is not a very fit person. He quite often asks to come out of the game. He quite often asks to come out of the game because he is sucking air and he can't go anymore in their fast-paced offense. I think that if he does end up on Cobbins, he's going to have a monstrous game. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he has the 5th best defensive rebounding rate in the country, and his offensive rebounding rate is really good as well. He's involved in almost every single possession that the Mountaineers have because they have no way of scoring in the half court other than Staten creating for himself. And when Staten comes down there at Williams, they almost always dump the ball into him, and that's where they run the offense through. If he can stay on the court, and I think he will, if he is guarding Cobbins, because Cobbins is not a part of the offensive rotation for Oklahoma State. It'll keep Devin Williams off the foul sheet, and it'll keep him from running around and doing too much physical activity. He'll be able to do his work on the offensive end. I really like him today. He hasn't done much lately, but he's been in foul trouble. And he hasn't had the greatest matchups. He's a risk, but I will say that I think this is a pretty big game for him. I think he goes for something like 20 and 12 today.
Oh wow, bold proclamation with Devin Williams. All right, well, we won't hold you to exactly that, but we'll hold you to something close. Next game on the slate: Iowa State and Texas. Obviously, anybody drawing Iowa State gets a pace bump, so we get a pace bump for Texas here. And the question becomes, just how high can Jameel McKay's stock grow? 45 fantasy points the other night, a very solid game where he was still relatively highly owned, but now we've seen a $1,000 price increase on McKay and a matchup against the Texas interior. I think this is maybe the time where I finally jump off the bandwagon.
Yeah, his price is like right up there where I would be wary of using him. As a starter, he seems to be about a 30 fantasy point per game type of guy. I think he's going to level out about 8,000 if he remains in the starting lineup. This is not a good matchup for him. Turner and Ridley both give him some issues on the defensive end. I wouldn't fault you if you wanted to use him just because he's been so good, and he gets three to four blocks a game. I don't think he used to be like a just plug and play. He used to be a must play. You build your lineups around him. I don't think he's that anymore. His price has gotten up there. I still think he's a good play. I just think you need to make sure that you have a few other people in your lineup and that you can fit him in pretty comfortably.
All right, so let's move to the rest of Iowa State then. You've got Morris is still up there in the high 7Ks, Niang still up there in the high 7Ks. Even Dustin Hogue seen a bump in price to 6,500. Are any of them, solid plays here? And is there anybody from Texas that we can take advantage of the pace bump here?
Texas's interior defense is really good. Actually, they have the number one interior defense in the nation. They just took that title from Kentucky, and I think it was in the last game against Oklahoma. They went to the number one 2-point defense, which is why I definitely do not like McKay all that much. I also do not like Niang all that much. He hasn't been doing much lately. It's hard. I mean, I don't like Hogue. Bryce John Jones hasn't been playing all that much. If I wanted one guy from Iowa State matchup wise here, I would want Monty Morris. The problem is he hasn't been great lately, and he's still priced like a stud. I am not in love with Iowa State here. I think that you could probably not take any of their guys and not feel bad about it. They do have a 72 over-under in this game, but Texas is a bad matchup, and they spread it out pretty well, and they're all priced pretty fairly.
I would agree. I don't find any Cyclones in my lineups that I've made so far. So let's move to Texas. Part of me wants to play Isaiah Taylor, but I'll probably talk myself out of it. I want to play somebody from Texas. I just don't know who.
Yeah, that's where I am too. And I'm not playing Miles Turner at 8,200. I know he's been a popular play lately. I just don't see it. I mean, he's went for 44 and 41, and I don't think that's where he levels out. I think he's probably about a 20 to 25 point per game type of guy. He's had a couple of monstrous games. He could very much prove me wrong. I just think 8,200 is too much. He's not guaranteed to play over 30 minutes ever. He's probably more of a 25-minute per game type of guy right now with all the depth that Texas has in the front court. I do like Taylor. I think that he's going to have a nice bounce-back game here, pace-up game. There's going to be some running and gunning here. I think Taylor's going to be doing some good work in transition. He's pretty good at finishing around the rim. His minutes are set. He hasn't been looking for his shot very much lately. I think Rick Barnes probably got into him about trying to shoot too much when Texas was really struggling. So I think he's been trying to distribute a little bit more lately. One interesting play, I think, Jonathan Holmes. I know we talked about him before. He had the concussion. He didn't play for a while. He went back to 30 minutes per game last game. He's kind of their clutch scorer. He's the guy they go to in the clutch when they need a bucket. That is, if Taylor isn't going to shoot. He rebounds well. He does a lot of stuff well on the wing. I think 6,600 is a decent price for him. I do think that his price should probably level out around 7,000, 7,500 when he gets back to full strength. It's a risk taking him if you look at his game logs, but this is a tempo up game for Texas, and I think that there's going to be some good plays here. I think a few of these guys in Texas are going to make their value.
All right, let's move on to Butler and Xavier, the next game on the slate. Trying to wrangle some value out of Butler proved kind of difficult the other night. Keelan Martin was a popular pick, ended up only playing about 9 minutes, and the guy I think a boost goes to with this team is Roosevelt Jones. His price is all the way down to $7,200 on FanDuel. You look, he put up over 30 fantasy points in the last game, basically played the whole game, 18.6 rebounds and 6 assists. So if I had to pick my favorite play from this game, it's probably Jones at 7,200.
I would have to agree with you wholeheartedly there. I think that Jones basically gets a ton. He basically is going to take all of Travis's shots. I was so disappointed in Holtman that he didn't play Keelan Martin more. Not only because I was on Keelan Martin the whole time, I had him everywhere. It really disappointed me because Austin Etherington was awful. He was terrible. There's no other word that you can say except for just awful, terrible, no good. He is bad at basketball. I don't know how else to say it. I don't understand why you would play him over Keelan Martin, who can actually score the ball and rebound. I was yelling at the TV. I couldn't believe that Etherington was still in the game. I think he made like one decent play where he like ripped a rebound out of some guy's hands, or I don't even know.
He had 3 rebounds in 22 minutes and no other stats.
Yeah,
other than maybe some missed shots, which aren't going to show.
He went 0 for 3 from the field. He was used in 8% of the possessions for the team. He is basically invisible while he's out there. They're playing 4-on-5 when Austin Etherington is in the game.
A ringing endorsement.
So yeah, I definitely think I agree with you. Roosevelt Jones gets the bonus. I do think I was a little bit wrong. I didn't think that Cameron Woods would get any more shot attempts. He did. He got a few more shot attempts than usual. I think that he may get a little bit of a boost. He's only 6,900 here and definitely has the upside for 30. He's one of the best rebounders. Xavier has some pretty stocky guys in the paint that may cause Cameron Woods an issue. He's really thin, but he's still a great rebounder. I think Barlow's price is a bit too high here at 7,300. Yeah. He's been great lately, but for 100 more, I would want Jones over him. Dunham, I don't mind him. He's basically an Eli Carter clone. All he does is shoot. He's a much better shooter than Carter, and he gets more opportunities. 6,600 is a little bit more than I would like to pay for him. Xavier's not very good defensively in a half court, so I think that Roosevelt Jones is going to be able to break down a lot of their guys off the dribble.
Anybody from Xavier worth a look here? Was there something with? I did not see any of their game against Cincinnati. Something with Blewett that he only played 12 minutes, or was there fouls there? Obviously not the best matchup against Cincinnati.
I didn't see anything either. I don't think there was fouls. I think that, it's kind of been the theme all season. There'll be just times when he just doesn't play, and he's not involved in the offense. Xavier's kind of a hard team to peg for me. They run it through so many different guys. It's kind of a pick the straw out of a hat and see if you get the guy who's going to take the most possessions that game right. I do like Stainbrook's price at 6,800. He's usually pretty consistent out there when he does play. He's not going to play over 30 minutes. He's not going to do anything too crazy, but he's pretty big inside. He does grab the rebounds. He's a pretty good offensive rebounder. I like him more than Jalen Reynolds at 6,600. I think that Stainbrook's price is okay here. I think you can roll with him and feel pretty good. The other two guys, D. Davis and Miles Davis, the two Davises are the ones who take most. They take most of the minutes in the backcourt. They're probably the safest guys here. Davis isn't much of a scorer, but he did score last game, and you can see when he does score, he has a pretty decent upside, 30 fantasy points when he does score, because he's going to get almost 10 assists every single game. Um, Butler's pretty good defensively, which kind of scares me about him. But if you want guys for Xavier who are going to be on the court almost the whole game, it's the Davises.
All right, just a couple games to go. Actually, we've got 5 games left to go, and we're basically out of time, but we'll scoot through them really quick. Villanova and Marquette, we basically talked about Marquette a little bit earlier, with Carlino being out. They're not very good. They're probably not going to score a ton of points in this game. I think you could give Jawan Johnson a look, but for me, I'm pretty much avoiding Marquette here.
Yeah, I think you can. I think you can avoid Marquette. I was really disappointed in his 9-point game. I seem to be getting hitting a lot of those landmines lately. Guys who are going to step into a bigger role, just absolutely putting up a complete dud. Hilliard is 8,300, which is completely ridiculous. I don't see how you would ever use him at 8,300.
Yeah.
Villanova just spreads the ball around so well. I think Chefu is 6,200, has merit. He didn't start a couple of the earlier games because he was late to class. He started the last one. I think that he is just too big in the paint for Luke Fisher to deal with. I think Ochefu should be the good play here. I don't really like anyone else from this game.
All right, move on to Notre Dame and Boston College. Boston College basically a one-man show with Hanlon. He's up to 9,400 now. We've talked about Dennis Clifford quite a bit as a value guy. Still sitting there at min salary. Didn't do much against Florida State the other night, but a guy that can get you 25, 27 minutes from a min price value guy. Those are basically the guys on Boston College. Notre Dame, anybody we like here. Jarian Grant has been playing out of his mind lately, but he's up to 9,900, so basically max salary. Can we still pay that for him here, or is he too expensive now?
I think he's too expensive.
Yeah.
Boston College is pretty slow, and they're not terrible defensively lately. I like Hamlin better than Grant here, especially at home. All things considered, I would go Hamlin over Grant. I think Grant is great in the GPP. I think he's just too expensive for your cash games, considering the lack of value plays on the board today. He has the upside here, but he usually hits the upside in good matchups, and this isn't a great one for him. I'm not that big on Notre Dame today. I mean, Connaughton is still too expensive. He hasn't hit value in a while. Demetrius Jackson's been kind of, after having a great start to the year, he's been kind of a bum lately. I can't get off August. I just want to use him all the time. I think he's got 25 point average is 6,200. I really like him there at that price point. The last game he had a few bogus foul calls and he ended up sitting. Basically, Notre Dame is saying that they need him to play with confidence for their stretch run. I do think he gets a lot of run in this one. Boston College doesn't have a very good interior defense. I think 6,200 is a pretty fair price to play for him. And then one guy that I do like the price on for Boston College is right below August, Aaron Brown. He takes a ton of shots, almost as many shots as Hanlon does. He is going to need to make the shots to make his value, but he usually does. He's a good scorer. He's probably one of the most underrated scorers in the country. He's going to get his opportunities, and 6,100 is definitely a fair price for him against a Notre Dame team who lacks a little bit on the defensive end.
All right, next game, Clemson and Duke. Might be the time to take a rest on some of these Duke guys who have seen their prices really rise. Tyus Jones over 8K, Quinn Cook almost 8K, Okafor at 9.5 and a little bit banged up. Winslow up to 7.5. Can we pay for any of them against a solid defensive and slow-paced Clemson team?
Yeah, I think this is tough. I think that if we can get some confirmation before tip that Okafor is not going to play, I think Justice Winslow becomes a plug-and-play option at 7,500. He'd end up at the 4. He'd be a great rebounder. I think that he would do a lot of damage down low. I think he'd be a great play if Okafor does not play. The problem is, I think Okafor is going to play, and I doubt we know. I'm, 98% certain if Okafor is not going to play, I'm 98% certain we will not know by noon.
Yeah.
If he is going to play, we probably
We might know by noon.
we probably will know. But if he's not going to play, they're probably going to wait until tip off
Yeah.
to say. So I can't work with Okafor here. Clemson's just too good defensively. I mean, Duke is a machine on offense, but Clemson's really going to try to slow the pace. They're going to need to. They're going to need to cut the possessions to have any chance in this game. Emil Jefferson is interesting, but then again, he is reliant on Okafor being out, and I don't think you want him in your cash games. I don't know. There must be some sort of switch that he flicks on when he decides to want to play or not want to play.
I tell you this: if you wanna gamble on Okafor being out, put both Winslow and Jefferson on a GPP team and give it a shot.
Yeah, that would be if Okafor's out. I do like both of those guys.
Yeah.
They're going to do all the rebounding and they're going to do the work inside against Clemson, especially if Blossom Game's out. Speaking of him, he's way too expensive for me, even if he didn't have his, I think it's an ankle. I'm not sure, but he's questionable. He's too expensive. You would think against Duke, who's pretty fast-paced and doesn't have that great of a defense, they're kind of like a Notre Dame clone. You would think that Clemson would have some good plays. Roper's expensive. Blossom Game's injured. There's really no one else who, you really like. I think someone's going to have a good game here. Maybe it's Dante Grantham. He hasn't been great lately, but maybe it's Landry Noko who's been playing pretty good lately. Jordan Roper could potentially make some shots from the outside. I don't know about Clemson. I don't think you can really take any guys with confidence.
Yeah, it's hard to peg. Like you said, somebody should have a good game, but kind of hard to peg who, so it's just difficult. But if you want to throw a guy in a GPP, Roper I think would be a guy that has some nice upside, but nobody that you can count on for sure there. So move to the next game, 2 to go. TCU and Kansas. They played a really low-scoring game earlier this year, and I don't love much here. The first game was relatively low-scoring, and I just don't like a lot. Cliff Alexander has been somewhat of a disappointment since he moved into the starting lineup. I guess they're going to keep him there, but he had like a 1 rebound game earlier this week and only played 6 minutes. So just hard to figure out what the rotations are going to be for Kansas. And against TCU, I don't think you really miss out on anything by not taking him.
No, I think Self really didn't like the matchup of Alexander against West Virginia. I think he goes back to getting his 15 to 20 minutes per game. But even with that, he wasn't a good play. I mean, I used him a couple of times. I thought when he entered the starting lineup, he was going to be much better than he was. He's not. He has upside in the right situation. I don't think that's against TCU, who has one of the top interior defenses in the country. Oubre is still a little bit too expensive for me. He's been getting minutes lately, and when he gets minutes, he produces. I just don't know if I could pay $6,500 for him. If you wanted to, I can certainly get on board with that. TCU is just pretty slow. I don't like a lot of stuff in this game. I think Perry Ellis is still too expensive at $7,900. Even in good matchups like West Virginia and Iowa State, he doesn't make value at his price point there. Frank Mason hasn't really made value in a while at $7,200. Like we've been talking about, this isn't a great matchup for him. Selden, basically all he does is score. I don't really like Kansas here, and I'm of the belief that they're probably going to take the screws to TCU and blow them out here. And I still don't like a lot of their players. If you go with that, if you expect TCU to get blown out, I don't like any of the TCU players either. Um, Kenrich Williams has been kind of the guy lately who's playing 30 minutes a game. He's been kind of their 20 points per game type of guy. Certainly couldn't blame you if you had 64 left and you needed a filler. Um, there's just not much to like.
Agreed. Agreed. I really don't have anybody from this game. And like I said, I don't think you miss out on a lot by not taking anybody there. So, last game, Arkansas and Mississippi State. Should be a relatively fast-paced SEC game here. So, anybody you really like from this last game?
Yeah, I think this is where you can get a few good plays. I do believe Roquez Johnson has a concussion. He's listed as questionable, but if you go with what we know about concussion so far, I would not expect him to play in this game. Um, he was up and down. He wasn't a great play to begin with, but I do believe that Travis Daniels will be the one that takes over his spot. He did get a bunch of minutes last game, and he's a little bit taller than Johnson. Um, I can get on board with the Travis Daniels mid-price play here for 4,500, especially if Roquez Johnson is out. I may even stick him in without knowing because I do not think that Roquez Johnson is going to play. Um, it was just a couple days ago that he got a concussion. I don't think he's going to be ready to play.
I think that was last night.
Yeah, Thursday night.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So,
if you're watching this Saturday morning, we taped this Friday night, and yeah, it was Thursday night. So you're not getting a guy cleared in less than 48 hours, most likely. I don't want to say 100%, but it's probably 75+% that he's not going to play.
Yeah, and without Johnson as well, Craig Sword again, and even with his back problems, steps into big role. He's the go-to scorer. 6,000 is still too cheap for him. He's made value at that price point for 3 games in a row, and even 3 out of 4 before that. I think he's a great play at 6,000. I wouldn't. The only reservation I would have with using both Travis Daniels and Craig Sword is that it takes up 2 of your ever so precious guard spots. So I think it's probably going to be one or the other. I don't hate Gavin Ware. His minutes are secure. He takes a decent amount of shots. He rebounds pretty well. And I'm very scared because I just listed 3 plays from Mississippi State that I actually like in this game. I don't know if the sky is going to start falling or what. I never thought that would happen. Maybe some hope for Texas Tech is on the horizon.
There we go. Arkansas, anybody here? Portis is 9.6K. Qualls is 8K. I mean, I don't love them on the road in this spot.
I think if you're paying up for Portis, you're paying up for a 30-point floor. I think that's basically what you get for him. He's a great player. 9,600 is a lot of salary. It might be a time to go balanced here with not a lot of value plays. Qualls, I believe Qualls had his 3-point game where he got sort of injured in the last one against Mississippi State. I didn't watch that game. I'm not sure if it was because of matchups, but he was awful last time. He played 20-something minutes. Yeah, he played 23 minutes. He scored 3 points and had 1 turnover against Mississippi State in their last matchup. That was at home. So if you go by matchups and you look at previous games, you're probably going to want to fade Qualls. I don't know. I mean, he may have been playing with an injury that whole game. Not 100% sure. He's been great lately. 8,000 was a little bit more expensive than I'd like. Rashad Mann's okay, 6,400. Arkansas is going to push the tempo. But anything outside of those 3 is a crapshoot. Mike Anderson just goes with who he feels like. Alandis Harris is okay. He's locked into some pretty decent minutes, but he doesn't have much more than a 20-point upside, and you're going to need 20 for value from him. I actually, I like Mississippi State players more than I do Arkansas here. That's very strange.
It's all about the matchups, and they are at home. They get the tempo boost here. They're not very expensive, so that all leads to those picks there. But all right, we have overextended time on the show today, so we'll get out of here. Good luck, everybody, in your matchups on this Saturday. We'll be back at you a week from today as we get closer and closer to March Madness, and a lot of people playing daily fantasy college basketball, so there's still time to get yourself acclimated, get in some games, get your feet wet if you're new to the sport, because there are a lot of new players that pick it up for tournament time. So if you want to get an edge on some of your competition, start playing now, and it's never too early to get started. So with that, we'll sign off for another week of college basketball after dark. Varncass, thanks for hopping on once again.
Yep. Thanks for Road Grind for having me on, and good luck to everybody.
Good luck, everybody. We'll see you next week.